Welcome back to another episode of Into the Pit. We have Steve Shippy here with us, and he is on a show called Haunted in the Heartland, which has just started on the Travel Channel. How you doing, Steve?
Good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing wonderful. Enjoying the day. Beautiful weather here in Texas. What's it like up there in Michigan?
Cold.
Cold?
Cold, snowy, ever changing. I think 2 days ago it was like 50 degrees, and I think it's like 35 now. We're supposed to get like a half a foot of snow.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, we were in our shorts yesterday. This morning I had turned the heater on. I think tonight we're supposed to be in the 30s. So yeah, wonderful weather we're having.
What city are you in?
I'm just north of Austin.
Austin, okay.
Yeah, so if you don't like the weather in Texas, just wait 5 minutes.
That's what we say here too, for sure.
So you were on a show called Haunted Saginaw?
Yeah, well, it's a documentary film series that I produce and direct myself. So we've got 10 films available right now. In fact, I'm in the middle of shooting our 11th investigation. So if I seem a little spacey, it's because we slept like 2 hours. Yeah, so it's all available on Amazon Prime. They can search my name, Steve Shippy, or Haunted Saginaw. And Saginaw, Michigan is a really interesting town, man. And we have some pretty notorious hauntings, a lot of activity here. So it's like an abundance of cases that we have to kind of sift through constantly.
So Wolverines or Spartans?
Well, I'm not a huge football fan necessarily, but I would have to say, I'd have to say U of M, Wolverines.
Yes. Okay, now we can keep talking. No, but seriously, how did you get hooked up with the Travel Channel?
Well, interesting enough, kind of going back to the Haunted Saginaw film series. So, we've been doing that for a decade, and we do a pretty huge premiere here in Saginaw. We got 4,000 people every year that attend our red carpet premiere. So it's made a lot of buzz regionally, but then once Amazon Prime picked us up and we were able to get on that platform, it can be seen worldwide and caught a lot of attention that way. And then we started getting contacted by production companies, something I really didn't expect to happen. And a lot of people wanted to offer us a show. And at one point, a gentleman reached out to me from LA and said that a network had interest in what we were doing, and that network was Travel Channel. Well, to me, Travel Channel is kind of the premier network for that type of content. Always been a fan of it, so I was interested off the bat. And then to me, the main thing was, it was basically said to me that, hey, we really appreciate your style, what you do as a documentary filmmaker / investigator. We don't want to really change anything you're doing, but just give you the ability to kind of broaden your scope and not just be in your hometown, but be able to kind of do the Midwest or the Heartland region as a whole. So it made sense to us.
Okay. But did you all get to come to Texas, or are you going to get to come to Texas?
Well, we haven't yet, but I'd love to. Definitely. I love Texas. I've been going to San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, pretty much multiple cities in Texas for a long time touring because I do music and whatnot. So spend a lot of time in Texas, and it's all about the barbecue there, of course.
Oh, heck yeah. So you play music too, huh?
Yeah.
So what's the name of your group?
It goes by Prozac.
Prozac. Okay.
Prozac, yeah. Strange Music is the record label I'm signed to.
So hence the name, The Real Prozac, on Instagram.
Yeah.
I kind of wondered.
Yeah, you're kind of like, what's going on here? Sponsored by Prozac. No. But yeah, that's my recording artist name. I've been signed to a label called Strange Music. If you're familiar with the artist Tech9, he's pretty much the largest artist on the label. And so, we've been touring that area for quite a bit.
About the newest groups that I know is Rob Zombie and Godsmack. So other than that, I probably don't.
For sure. Yeah, different kind of genre, definitely.
Yeah, sorry.
I see you rocking the Kiss shirt, so you're a rock fan, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge metal fan myself, actually.
Yeah, the 50s, 60s, 70s. The 70s was kind of like my childhood years, and of course
Black Sabbath.
Oh yeah. Black Sabbath, Kiss, Ted Nugent, all those great groups. And of course, the 80s came along, and it kind of, I don't know how to explain it, kind of teeter-tottered around there. Some of it was good.
Weird, yeah.
But anyway, getting back to your paranormal stuff, how did you actually get started doing that?
Well, the house I grew up in when I was younger had a lot of activity. I was very young at that time, so that, definitely led me into the journey of the paranormal. You can't unsee or unexperience that type of stuff. And once you're aware of it and know that it's real, and leaves you with more questions than answers, basically. So that kind of really began the journey. And as far as investigating, amateur wise, I started around 14 and a half, 15 years old, simple, simple stuff like putting a cassette recorder, tape recorder in the cemetery at night, going back to listen for EVPs, that type of thing. But, didn't really start professionally doing it on a bigger scale till probably my early 20s. And so we were doing a lot of cases. And then as my music career got bigger, some friends of mine were saying, well, what about your fans? I mean, do you think they would be interested in this side of you? What you do, maybe you should document it, or just create a little documentary about what you're doing with this. So we thought about it, and we're like, okay, well, it could be interesting, something to consider. So we did. And the first documentary was called Haunting on Hamilton Street, which is about an old saloon here in Old Town Saginaw. Mm-hmm. So we did that, and then we went to premiere it. And then the only theater that had availability was a 2,000 capacity theater, 2,000 seats. So, we were kind of like, well, it's only 40,000 people in the city of Saginaw. Maybe this is out of our league. And don't ask me why we did it, but we decided not only were we going to rent that Temple theater, but we were going to rent it out for 2 nights, 4,000 seats. And that somehow we were going to draw that many people. And we did, actually. We sold it out seat per seat. And so there was a demand to see more of our investigations. And we did another and another, all the way, through a decade and counting. So.
Wow. Now, when it comes to the paranormal and your music, I mean, how do you want people to know you?
Well, they're definitely tied together, at least to me, through a lot of my lyrics, directly or indirectly. I'm kind of talking about experiences that I've had, or, the way that I see these two things being connected. In fact, even my largest selling album thus far is titled Paranormal. But I guess at the end of the day, to be simple about it, I'm just a guy that had a lot of experiences. I'm a believer in the paranormal. I respect it. And this is just what I do, for lack of a better word. I've kind of been immersed in, this culture since the beginning. So I'm just here to find the answers. I don't think by any means, I have all the answers. I'm not, one of those type of people. Nobody knows everything there is to know about something that can't be explained. So we're always learning, right? Sure. Definitely can't get to the point where you really feel that you have all the answers. Always got to be searching. But for me at this point, I think in my career, it's about helping people more than it's about just catching evidence. When I was younger, that was kind of the thrill, was got to catch the evidence, but now it's more about, helping people, listening to their stories, trying to see the different patterns. And really what's unique about haunting in the Heartland is trying to figure out what's causing the hauntings, because a lot of these hauntings are community based, which is really interesting, not just one home or one property.
Yeah. The problem is nowadays, so many people are so engulfed in finding the fame, they forget the whole reason that most of us get into the paranormal, which is to help people. Right. And, yeah, it's great. I love finding evidence. I mean, who doesn't? But you'd like to give people some peace of mind, and, because maybe it's a loved one, or, there's somebody that they feel like they need help passing on to the next level, So I get where you're coming from. This community, and I call it a family because I feel like it's a family, but there's so many that, gosh, they're not only looking for fame, but then they think, oh, well, I've been doing this for, 10 years. I've been doing this for 20 years. Now I'm an expert. Well, I'm sorry. I'm like you. You're not an expert. There's always something new to learn, and also new experiments and investigation. So what's kind of something that you've kind of made your own as far as investigating?
Well, I really appreciate the way that you just wait a minute. That cup right there. Was that Whataburger?
What a burger. Better
Bro,
believe it.
I'm so jealous right now. We don't got those. Just
Yeah,
saying.
that's why I couldn't move away from Texas, man.
All right. Yeah.
Now
But
you come to Austin, I'll take you.
let's do it. 6th Street, right?
Actually take you here, the one in Cedar Park. I got the hookup and get you free tea, man.
Sweet tea. There you go. So, I definitely like, it's funny, as you say, paranormal expert, that's a hard thing to grasp right there. And a lot of times I'll get called that, if I'm doing an interview with somebody, they'll refer to me as that. And it's always pretty intimidating because it's kind of like, well, that's a hard phrase right there, because you don't want to portray that you have all the answers, so to speak. But as far as what makes me, in my opinion, unique to my approach with this is I think it's just kind of the rapport building with what you're dealing with, not being, too focused on just catching the evidence, but trying to communicate with whatever's there, trying to have some kind of empathy for it, which sometimes can backfire. We all know that you may think you're communicating with one thing, but then you later find out that what's in the house or the property is something else completely. But I just think that dialogue is my strong point, both with the living and the dead, if that makes sense. Really understanding what the family's going through, because I've been through it. Being patient with them at the same time when you need to, kind of being a little bit stern to say, okay, listen, something, you guys got to make some changes here, or if you want this to subside, these are steps that you have to take. Really coming at it from a multi-angle investigative approach. That's kind of my strong point, I think.
Yeah, I've always had this philosophy, because I've been a supervisor for years and years, that in order to be a good leader, you also have to be a good follower. And with that, if somebody has an idea that seems plausible, why not try it? Don't go out with that idea of, oh, well, I'm Mr. Perfect, I know exactly what I'm doing. That's not how this community works. And I attribute like ghost hunters and shows like that have given us something to think about. Oh, look, there's equipment that I didn't know that there's out there, or I've never thought about doing it this way. And it helps a lot.
Yeah, no, it does for sure. Like you mentioned, ghost hunters, the TAPS team, man, I mean, they just really pioneered the whole thing. And I definitely am a huge fan of all those guys and what they've done and their approach and their techniques. And so I think that they really kind of set the bar properly, kind of starting off this whole thing in terms of the current days. Of course, we know paranormal investigation goes back way far beyond that, but I think that, they really broke through and brought it to a mainstream level, so to speak. I don't think they ever intended on doing that. They seem like a bunch of guys just doing what they do, and then somehow they ended up in this place. But luckily for all of us in the field, they really did it right, and they set the tone properly.
Exactly. And I'm going to ask you something I've never asked anyone before. But do you think that there should be a push for the paranormal to actually be considered a science that should maybe be taught in schools?
I mean, yeah, I really do. I mean, we know how real this stuff is, and so do millions and millions and millions of people throughout the world. It would be nice because, at that point there could be grants and financial aid going into this, and research that could really advance the field quickly, not to mention more people getting interested in it, learning more about it. The more brains that kind of get into the field, the more equipment that could be developed. That would be incredible. And what's crazy about that is I've never really thought about that, but that seems like something that not only should happen, but probably will happen at some point. Going back to when I was younger and dealing with the experiences that we dealt with in our house, we really wished back then that we could have had somebody to help us. But back in that era, it was still very taboo, especially in a small rural community. You didn't want to go around saying, oh, our house is haunted and this is happening and this is happening, because people are going to be like, what the hell's going on in that house? You know what I mean? And it was bad enough that we couldn't really have friends over, things of that nature. So I guess what I'm saying is, if paranormal would have been as accepted back then as it is today, I think we could have gotten some help, and who knows how that could have changed.
Well, you think back like to the late 1800s, there was a real surge in the interest in the paranormal when, you had things like the Ouija board and spirit boards, all the different things they used to communicate. Yes, seances, that kind of thing. And then, I guess as time went on, people thought that was kind of stupid or, very taboo subject. So it kind of lost interest as far as mainstream, but you still had those people in the background that were like, I'm still interested in this. And then ghost hunters came along, and I think it brought it back to mainstream again, even though, they'd been investigating for a while. And I think we've come to a point that this could be something that could be considered serious to bring up in colleges or something, because I mean, at one point it was universally accepted that the earth was flat, and then all of a sudden, the world is round. And then, they had this belief that the sun revolved around the earth, and, it was the other way around. And so why not? Why can't we get into this and give grants and explore deeper into this subject? Because I believe it.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, it's been, that's what's so funny. It's like, you come across people that are skeptic, and of course, and why wouldn't they be if they haven't had a personal experience themselves? But with the amount of documentation that exists currently and has for how many years at this point, and I remember reading a poll, I want to say 2013 maybe. It was CBS, and they polled, I want to say it was like however many thousand, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 adults, and about 40% of those adults believed in the existence of paranormal phenomenon. I mean, so that's a huge number, per capita within that study. And we know that paranormal events and activities been documented, spirit activities been documented. It's referenced in the Bible. It goes on way before that. It's hard to believe in this day and age that there are still people that wouldn't consider this a valid study or field. It's kind of interesting, but then again, there could be motives behind that too. Who knows?
Yeah. If you didn't have skepticism, though, you wouldn't have real investigations or experiments going on.
Yeah, very true. It's a necessary evil, so to speak.
But I mean, I'm like you. If you believe in God, you believe in the Bible, then you have to believe there's spirits, because there are stories in there about that. When David had went to the soothsayer, and I forgot exactly how the story goes. I used to know those stories back and forth, but they're there. And so,
yeah, no, absolutely.
They believed it then. Why can't we believe it now?
Yeah, and we know that. I think the majority of people at this point do believe and do understand that there's things that are happening that we can't explain. And of course, I mean, look at how little we know about the world, about the universe, about time, space, gravity. Like, we don't even have an inkling to how this all really works or is connected. So, yeah.
And the little bit we know about space, we even know a little bit less than in the oceans,
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
still so much more to explore. There may be other aspects of science that we have yet to figure out that are right here.
Yeah, literally right here in our own Earth.
So, Travel Channel, I think that they are, I think they're awesome because they have given a platform for this that was kind of going away. I mean, it used to be Sci-Fi Channel,
Yep.
and now I think with Travel Channel, it's even taken more seriously. What's your belief on that?
No, I agree with that. A lot of a lot of interviews I do when I'm talking to people, they, in fact, the other day I was doing a radio interview, and somebody had said to me, "Well, how do you feel about Travel Channel having so many paranormal shows. Is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing for the field? And I mean, and I think they made the remark, well, of course you won't say otherwise because you're signed to the network, I'm sure, but let's hear your answer. And I'm like, well, I don't see how it's a bad thing. I mean, if you're a fan of the paranormal space as a show, of course, then that's a great thing. But if you're interested in the field itself, in paranormal investigation, the more people that are doing it, the more methods that are tried and trial and error, the more evidence that's collected. It's just furthering the field. And what's interesting to me as well is, Travel Channel is not going to put out this much paranormal content if there wasn't a demand for this much content. I mean, bottom line, it wouldn't, of course they wouldn't. So that's also a good thing to see that people are taking a huge interest. It's kind of like you said, I mean, 15 years ago, something of that nature, like, Sci-Fi Channel, you're right. I mean, that was kind of the place. You had your Ghost Hunters and Ghost Hunters Academy, Ghost Hunters International, those type of shows. And Ghost Adventures, was kind of like the one over here on Travel Channel, but that was kind of about it at the time. And it definitely had a large impact, a lot of viewers, and then it seemed to kind of subside for a while. Of course, there were still more shows out there and whatnot, but then now it's kind of taken this huge just push back into pop culture, which is kind of it's a great thing for us. It's a great thing for the field. I'm not exactly sure where it came from, but it certainly seemed to just come back even bigger than it did the first time. And I believe that it's because more and more people are experiencing this stuff. So therefore there's more of an interest in this field.
Well, I think since that they're making it a little bit more mainstream, people are going to be more apt to come out and talk about their stories. I think they've been there all along, but people are too scared to come out and say, "Oh my gosh, I had this encounter with a spirit or a ghost or whatever," and so now you've made it easier for people to come out and say, "Okay, I can talk about this now."
I think you are 100% right. I mean, it's not that there's been an increase of activity, and that's what's causing, this fascination with the field and what we do and whatnot. But it's becoming more acceptable, like you said, to talk about it, speak about it. You can post on social media if you're living in a home that's haunted, and can actually talk to people and say, hey, how many times I'm sure do you see, people online that are like, caught this on my home video surveillance camera, or put a put a digital recorder out last night and listen to what I found or what I heard, or here's what I'm experiencing. And people are talking, hey, wow, what do you think it is? You should try this and you should try that, and people are sharing theories and all that. Imagine what that would have been like 50, 60 years ago.
Oh, exactly.
You'd have been ostracized. You know what I'm saying? People would be like, okay, we're not coming to your house anymore. Are you a devil worshiper? What's happening? I mean, there would be all those kind of things happening in people's minds, which really sadly isolates that person.
Right.
Like if you're experiencing a haunting, it's already kind of confusing. It can be scary and all of that stuff too. But then when you have to keep that all within you and you can't even talk to friends and family about it, it makes it that much worse,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. How many times have you been accused of being a devil worshiper because you tell them you go out and you hunt ghosts?
Yeah. That once in a while that definitely does happen with some people. And just kind of like that theory also that there's a small percentage of people out there, but they do exist, that believe that any spirit activity, any paranormal activity is all demonic. It's all it's all evil and that type of thing. And me personally, I don't believe that, of course.
No, I don't either. And and to say that some channel like Travel Channel is putting too much out there, to me it's kind of like saying, well, the library has too many books on this subject.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
Yeah. I give you permission to use that. Everybody else has to pay for it.
Right. It's like my next interview. I'm like, well, it's kind of like a library. You're just like, I heard that.
That's okay. I'll give you credit for it. It ain't no problem. But so you got this first season already recorded and done with?
Yeah. The first season of Hunting in the Heartland is already finished. We did 6 episodes total. The first one premiered on the 21st of February. The Watchmen, so that's available, I'm sure out there on demand and all that type of thing. And
Right.
then this Friday, the 28th, the second episode, I Am Red Death, takes place. And man, that investigation was really hardcore. It's in a small town of Greenville, Tennessee, kind of a mountainous area. Um, the case from the beginning, because there's a lot of steps to this. When people reach out to us, or occasionally, we reach out to them, but we want to know as much about the case as possible. So we really go through quite a bit before we determine that this is a place we're going to investigate. A lot of correspondence back and forth through email, Skype. We talk to people around the community. We want to talk to eyewitnesses that supposedly saw these things. So we give them a lot of homework to do. We want them to supply us with all the phone numbers of these people and see how motivated they are to want a solution, an investigation, that type of thing. And this case, I guess the reason I'm saying all this is because we had the bones of the case before we went there, but then as we got there, a lot more started to come out about what was really happening. So it was already intriguing, but then it just reached a level that we'd never expected. And I don't want to give away too much, of course, but what this family was plagued with was really intense. It affected them in ways that maybe 1% of cases affect people. There was a real tragedy in the family that they attributed to this force, this attachment, and it was pretty harrowing.
Have you had anything attached to you?
As far as following, yes. I mean, there's been some instances in my home where you're thinking, okay, well, this wasn't here when I moved in. We haven't had any issues like that. Then you go do a case, and then all of a sudden you start to see similarities going on in your home to a case that you were recently doing. But it's kind of interesting too, because I don't know why this is, but it seems like sometimes when something kind of does follow you from a case for a while, it doesn't stay, which is kind of interesting. It's like, you don't know, does it just kind of attach to you for a little while and then just kind of go back to where it was? Or, I'm not really sure how that works, but yeah, I do feel like I've had some residue, from working on certain cases. And you got to kind of call upon some, friends of yours in the field to come over and see if they can kind of take care of it for you,
Oh yeah. When we lived in LaPorte, which is just outside of Houston, we had stuff that would come through, but it would never stay. But it was constant activity. It was always something different. I've only had one thing attached to me that I actually had to have removed. Other than that, everything's been kind of, a little bit of activity here and there, stuff getting moved around, or, shadows and things like that. And of course, me, the skeptic in me, I'm always like, okay, did you see that? Because I just saw something move across, and I don't know if it was me or if it was my eyes adjusting from being into the light to the dark. Right. And my wife's like, no, I saw it too. Okay. But, everybody has their favorite part of doing investigations. And as far as me, I love the history of wherever we're going to. When you find the history, because was my favorite subject and still is to this day. And everybody, somebody likes to get out the EVPs and do EVP sessions, and some people like the camera part of it and think, what's your favorite part?
Well, that's a difficult one for me, because not only do I do the investigations, but I'm also a filmmaker, so I definitely have a passion for capturing the story through camera, the interviews and all of that. That's kind of a whole different world of its own. But I would say, in a sense, I guess you could say the history of it as well, but trying to solve what's causing the haunting, if that makes sense. One case I worked on, which is actually connected to the first episode that I did with Haunting in the Heartland, the Watchmen episode. It's about a small town of Merrill, Michigan, a very, very tiny town. It only has a population of just over 700 people. And with that episode, we largely focused on the old general store of Iva, Michigan, a ghost town, now Merrill, that has a lot of activity. But we loosely touched on the story about the Pomeranian farmhouse. And it's a lot to go into, but basically, and I was literally just talking about this last night on the way back from the investigation that we're currently doing. It was so fascinating to me that, you know, I was being contacted by somebody on social media that kept telling me, I have something that I want to give you, but I won't tell you what it is or what it's about, but we have to meet in person. And this went on for like a year. And needless to say, I'm not really apt to meeting strangers in strange places about things I don't even know what it's about. And finally I did. And this person gave me a box of police reports from the mid 70s.
Wow.
So we met at a coffee shop, and I'm sitting there and I'm kind of thumbing through this, and I'm reading just a few on the top, and I look at this person and say, so what is this? I mean, is this some kind of like script or some type of fictional project? Like, what am I reading? And she said, no, these are real. My grandfather was the sheriff during that time. He passed away not that long ago, and here were this box of police reports, and this is something that he talked about his whole life. And he planned to write a book at some point. He never got around to it. And I want to give this to you to see if you have any interest in investigating this. And man, I'm telling you, the thrill of the chase on that was extreme. I mean, you're going through these reports and you're hearing about a year and a half of police investigation on a paranormal case. You're hearing and you're reading about spontaneous combustion, disembodied voices, people being injured, explosions taking place in the house, teams from Duke University, parapsychology teams being brought in, from Lund University out of Switzerland. So much activity taking place that these officers are seeing it, they're witnessing it, they're bringing in other police agencies who bring in other agencies. They're trying everything in the world to explain what's happening because it truly is happening. And, you know, law enforcement isn't just going to come out and say, oh, well, it's haunted, it's a ghost, you know, that's what it is, take care. They're trying to rationally explain this through every means possible. Even, you know, seismographs, trying to see is the house built on a fault line, some type of salt mine could be underneath it, and that's why the house is shaking, or it is one of the most intense cases ever. And so that's kind of the thrill to me, is going through these reports and talking to the eyewitnesses. And, you know, one subject that you're interviewing gives you another lead, which gives you another lead. And to me, that's kind of the thrill of the whole case, is uncovering everything that you can.
Well,
that was a long rant, wasn't it?
Oh, no. You go on as long as you want to. Now, do you find with the law enforcement, is it kind of still the same scenario like it is with, say, UFOs, where, oh, I'm afraid of my career is going to be over if I say I saw a ghost, or are they a little bit more open to it now? I mean,
I think they're more open to it for sure. You know, I have pretty good rapport with law enforcement on these cases, and they're actually really helpful. One officer I worked with one time did say something that was pretty interesting. You know, he kind of put it in a perspective for me. We were talking and he said, okay, well, listen, before I start this interview, I'm going to tell you some things that I experienced, that I saw, that I heard. Once we start filming, I will word it in such a way that I can, and that's all I'm going to give you. And I said, okay, well, just out of curiosity, why? You know, why are you going to tell me these accounts one way personally, and then on camera another way? And then he just kind of looked at me really matter of fact, and he said, well, I'm a police officer. I'm carrying a weapon. I have this duty and this power that I uphold. If I were to go on camera and tell you that I see and hear things that aren't there, would you be comfortable with me carrying a weapon and making life and death choices and upholding the law? And I was like, all right, touche. I can understand that. So, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I think that I'm sure they would like to be even more helpful than they are, and share their stories, because, you know, police officers see a lot of things. Mm-hmm. You know, these guys are going into how many houses throughout their career. A lot of calls get made to the police for paranormal experiences, you know, like a case I was just referencing back in the 70s. So we've talked to a lot of law enforcement that have seen some really crazy things, and a lot of them work that third shift, which we know a lot of activity happens at night more so than during the day. But they got to be careful, I guess, how they word things.
Oh, I got you. I
Yeah.
got you. Yeah, as you can see, I had somebody trying to help me interview here.
Right. Special guest.
That's Dee Dee, our kitty cat.
Awesome.
Yes, she likes to help every once in a while. But if I don't let her in, she howls at the door, and that's all you're going to hear.
She's going to get in there one way or the other.
She's going to get in here one way or the other. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I see where you're coming from. I've worked for the city up here in Cedar Park, and when I was there was all kinds of stories about stuff that happened around there, and it even came from the police officers. And because I was in public works, and their facility, believe it or not, is actually built around an old Native American burial ground.
Okay.
And even the supervisors above me were like, yeah, you come in this building, sometimes there's stuff walking around in here. And I guess my point is I have noticed that they're pretty open to talking to us about it, but I wasn't sure how they were about talking to people outside. So,
right, publicly or on the record, that type of thing. Yeah. That case that the next episode that we're doing, I Am Red Death for Haunting in the Heartland, we did speak in that episode to a former sheriff, and he was super helpful. I mean, there was a pretty horrific tragedy that took place in the town of Greenville that we started to kind of connect the dots and see that what happened here could be the catalyst to some degree of what's happening over here. So we had to speak to some law enforcement about that tragedy, and he was willing to tell us everything that he knew. That also led us down the path to talk to the former district attorney involved in the case, and he was very open as well. But even with him, he told us what he was willing to tell us on camera, and then off camera, he told us stuff that just was mind-blowing, that the extent of the darkness involved in this case and how it affected himself and others around him, and shared, some personal accounts with that, which was pretty fascinating too.
Yeah, I'm going to be more apt to believe a police officer than most other people.
Right.
But,
for a lot of reasons. Yeah. I mean, they're, number one, I mean, just their mentality. They're, first responders, law enforcement, people of that nature, they're skeptics by nature. I mean, they're very fact-based, evidence-based people. So when they start telling you these things, I do believe that there is some more credibility to them just because of how they process what they observe and what they experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you see videos of police officers and they say, oh, well, this cop was being too rough with this person, tased them, and they shouldn't have done this and shouldn't have done that. You aren't on the scene. You don't see the situation. They put together facts in their heads.
Right.
And I mean, yeah, okay, granted, there are some out there that abuse their power, but more often than not, you're going to come against somebody that's been highly trained. And they, like you say, they observe and they pull together evidence before they make any kind of conclusion whatsoever. But, when they come up with the ghost stuff, that's where we step in to say, yep, you got it. That's what it was.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it is pretty amazing, I guess kind of wrapping up that thought is you do see more law enforcement getting involved to some degree, whether it be in documentaries or on these television shows about investigation of the paranormal. I do see an increase. I think that there, as paranormal is getting more accepted, that just kind of is universal. So now people that once wouldn't talk about it or shied away from the subject are now kind of like, okay, well, I think we kind of are all in agreement now that we're accepting that this is real. We know that. We're not afraid to say it. So they start to chime in a little bit more.
Now, I'm sure you've been asked this 1,000 times, but your favorite investigation so far?
Favorite investigation? That's an interesting one. Well, I guess for me, it goes back to the Dice Road investigation. I do have a documentary on the subject, A Haunting on Dice Road, which you can stream on Amazon Prime. If you have Prime, you can watch it free. Um, it was fascinating to me for all the reasons I had stated earlier. I mean, can you imagine, as an investigator, imagine hearing about a case where law enforcement consistently investigated something that they couldn't explain, bringing in more investigators, bringing in other branches of law enforcement, bringing in specialists, bringing in university people to study it, to the point where they exhausted all their resource and availability. And what's really interesting about this case is when it got to that point where law enforcement is like, okay, we cannot explain this. We've tried every rational means of explaining this, and there's no way to do so. At the time, the guy that owned the Detroit Tigers, his name was John Fetzer. He was a millionaire that was very eccentric, and very little known fact, he was very much into the occult, into the paranormal, trying to understand things. He funded a lot of different things to kind of further the field. He caught wind of the case and actually put in $50,000, and this is in the mid 70s, to bring out more people to study this phenomenon, to try to help this family. And in conclusion, there was no explanation, logically, of course, in any way as to the activity that was taking place. And the police reports are literally about this thick, you know, with all these stories, all these eyewitnesses. And I want to say there was probably around 100 law enforcement individuals, first responders, firemen, that all went on record to say, yes, these things happened. I witnessed it. It happened to me. It affected me. And in some cases, even hurt them to some degree physically. That's outstanding.
Yeah, because I mean, I have my favorite places that I've been to, and not necessarily the one that I've gotten the most evidence at. And then there's those that I thought I've wasted my time, and then went back to review evidence and found out, wow, there was more here than I expected. I mean, do you run across that too?
Yeah, definitely. It is kind of strange how sometimes a case that seems rather unassuming can just give you a mass amount of evidence and activity. And then some places you're so excited to go to because it's got this history, this reputation. It's a 170-year-old Victorian home. And then you get there and you're trying to decipher, is that a pipe or a sound? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's strange like that. You never know. You certainly can't judge a book by its cover in terms of a location and what it could potentially offer you investigation wise.
Yeah, we went to Yorktown Hospital, which is probably my favorite place to go just because of the history of it. But we went to a house in Spring, Texas, and that seemed like nothing was going on. And then we went back later on, there was really cool evidence there. And you just run across stuff like that sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be your favorite place to, capture all this evidence. You just enjoy the spot,
Right.
That's
Yeah,
just me.
exactly.
And so another question that a lot of people ask is, where's that one place that you'd like to go to you haven't been to yet?
That's a good one. I mean, so being really honest, to me, that would be that one case I haven't heard of yet. I really enjoy finding community-based hauntings, rural. I mean, that's really the catalyst for haunting in the Heartland. Is that's kind of really my what I enjoy doing is getting a case that's never been investigated before, learning new tales of folklore, trying to figure out, okay, what's fact, what's fiction, what's the cause of this, how is it affecting people, and documenting that and telling that story by the people who are really living it. Number one, as a documentarian, but then as an investigator, now going in and taking all that I've learned and heard and read and saw and bringing that into the investigation and trying to see if I can validate these claims.
Now, I know I've been to a place or two like this, but have you had those people that just call you or message you and say, hey, I've got all this stuff going on, and you finally go and there's you find out they're full of BS?
It's happened a couple times. Yeah. I tell this story once in a while because it really threw us for a loop, early on when we started to do these documentaries and putting them in a documentary format. We caught quite a bit of buzz. And so a lot of people were calling, and we were doing our best to really try to sift through it and say, okay, well, what cases take priority? Which ones have children that are being affected and scared, and who's kind of worse for the wear, and let's help them out and let's focus on that. So we went to a family's home and we're sitting at this dining room table and they're telling us all these, scary things and all this stuff that's happening. And they said, okay, well, we left out a recorder and we caught this voice and we want you guys to hear it. And they put it on the table and you could hear that they hit record, and about 5 seconds go by and you hear this very human voice right in the recorder say, get out, really loud. And then it just stops. And so I look at them and I say, okay, well, that recording is about 7 seconds long. I mean, oh, no, that was just that part of it. And I was like, okay, but you're playing it off the recorder. So, I mean, that's where it stopped. That's where it started. That's where it stopped. Mm-hmm. And then one of the children walks in and they look at the parents, and I think it was the mom, and they said, yeah, Mom, that's when you had me yell, get out, and sound really mean. That was fun. And we're just kind of like, so now we're all sitting at the table and we're trying to save face for them because, we're kind of embarrassed for them, and we, their kids are there, and we're all like, okay, well, thank you so much for telling us your story, and we'll consider all this stuff, and if we can't get to it, maybe we'll give you some advice of how you can kind of deal with this haunting on your own, and don't call us, we'll call you, kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
We just kind of were stunned by that because we were just like, wow, that's it's pretty wild.
We've actually gone to investigations where people are disappointed because we don't have a filming crew with us.
Right. Yeah. I guess I never thought about that, but the way it is today, they're kind of like, so where's the cameras? Where's the TV at? You're just kind of like, we're here to investigate the paranormal. That's what you want us to do, right? Yeah. I guess I never thought about that, but that seems like as this becomes more popular, there would be some, people that are looking more for, I want to get on the camera versus, hey guys, help me figure out what's happening here and give me some answers.
Well, if it happens to me one day where I get on camera, great. If it doesn't, I haven't lost anything because I'm doing what I enjoy.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, you feel free to not discuss this if you don't want to, and I'm not calling out any names or any shows or anything like that, but do you feel like there's shows that are out there that are just kind of faking stuff just to be on television?
To be honest with you, I don't really get a chance to watch a lot of the different shows out there. My viewership mainly goes back to the TAPS era, where I think it was Wednesday nights, you just couldn't wait to go home and see what TAPS was going to find and that kind of thing. And during kind of that point is where I was really heavily doing my documentaries and that type of thing. So of course I've seen a lot of episodes and I'll catch one here, catch one there, catch a few here, catch a few there, but I've never really sat and kind of taken in all the different content. Don't get me wrong. I hear a lot of talk, throughout the community and people I know. Oh, did you see this thing last night, or so-and-so show, or this show or that show? So I do hear a lot of, critique and criticism, needless to say, about different things or whatever. But, I think anything's possible. But at the same time, I think, the community acts as a very good filter for that kind of thing. And I think that shows like that, that you speak of wouldn't have much longevity or much of a shelf life to some degree, or at least the core paranormal field or whatever will filter that kind of stuff out and put their focus on the content that they get behind.
Well, I would hope that it doesn't happen. I think it does. I'm afraid to say yes. I do believe that it happens sometimes. I say I'm not going to call out any names because it's not fair. Because I don't know 100%. So
yeah,
it is what it is, and I would hope that it wouldn't, because then that just destroys everything that we've been working for so long.
Right.
So any advice that you have for anybody out there listening that either is in it now or wants to get into paranormal investigating?
Well, keeping it simple, and I always say simple just because, it's easy to go on a rant or for me especially, but I would say kind of like you just said, regardless if you're on television, camera, documentary, whatever, if you get into this because you love it, enjoy what you're doing, take pride in what you're doing. Don't think you have all the answers, because you don't, I don't, we don't, no one does. Be open-minded to everything. Always respect the client, their home, their business. When they tell you things and say off the record, keep it off the record. And just really enjoy it, and be careful, be careful in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of things that can happen while investigating, you should be kind of cautious of, many different things involving the living and the dead. And at the end of the day, just, learn, help advance the field, and defy fear, I guess, is basically what I would say. Don't be fearful of things. Try to understand it, and that would be my advice.
Having PTSD, I picked a really weird hobby because you get in there and you're so tensed up and you're waiting for that evidence to happen, and all of a sudden something, falls behind you, and that's what scares me.
Right. Just white knuckled the whole time. And
yeah. I mean, if a spirit came out and started talking to me, I would be more curious. But if you drop something on the floor and I hear it, then I'm screaming like a little girl.
Right. No, I understand. I hear you on that.
Man, we could sit here and we could talk for hours. I love what you have to say, and I really hope that y'all become very successful and we see a season 2.
For sure.
So what time on Travel Channel can people see you?
10 p.m. Eastern and 9 p.m. Central on Fridays. Episode 2, I Am Red Death, premieres the 28th of February. So coming up very soon this Friday.
I'm looking forward to it. I unfortunately had something else that came up Friday, and I wasn't able to stay and watch it, but it is on the DVR, so I'm gonna watch it as soon as I get free time.
For sure. Thanks, man. Yeah, it was great talking to you too, man. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and if you ever want to have me back for anytime, any reason, I'd love to be back.
Oh, definitely. We have several shows on our network. And so I might have somebody else that would like to talk to you if I can pass on your email to them.
Sure, absolutely.
Cool. And tell Karen, thank you for introducing us, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I will.
Karen's my new contact at Travel Channel now. She's awesome.
Yeah, she really is. She's very awesome. And if there's anybody that you're trying to speak with or have it on as a guest, she'll go out of her way to make that happen. Definitely.
Exactly. And if anybody wants to contact you, how can they go about doing so?
Well, the best way to contact me would be Steve at Haunted Saginaw, SAGINAW.com, or just contact me on Facebook, social media. If you're trying to find out more about the show on social media, just, hashtag Haunting in the Heartland. You can find us on all the different platforms and all of that good stuff.
Well, awesome. Well, I look forward to talking to you again in the future. I have your contact, and I will get back with you.
All right. When I'm in Austin, Whataburger. When I'm in Austin.
That's right. I'll take you to the best one in this area, and I promise you, they will hook you up with free tea, because I'm like this I'm buddy with them up there.
For sure. Let's do it.
They have an app that every 5 visits you get like a freebie.
Okay.
My phone's full of them, so I live there.
Frequent flyer miles.
Pretty much. Well, thank you again, Steve, and look forward to catching the show this week.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, bud.
All right. You too.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.